There's a man crawling at the edge of a cliff, winds howling, snow's coming down in sheets. He reaches out to grab hold of a girl who is not doing too well. He looks down at her, says one word, and then he pushes her off. Now, before you assume the worst, this man didn't do it out of hate. In fact, it was the exact opposite. His name was Rost. He lived in silence, fought in exile, and sent this girl down a cliff, all for a secret he could never tell. Now, to understand Rost and what would drive someone to make this kind of choice, you have to understand the world he lived in. This isn't our Earth, not anymore. This is a far future Earth, specifically Colorado and the surrounding Rocky Mountain region. But centuries after everything we built has been wiped away. Cities are gone, skyscrapers are hollow shells of rust, and the only things left standing are forests, mountains, and the bones of a civilization that burned itself out. Nature's alive and well. It's taking everything back. Except one thing. The machines. These things look like animals. Dinosaurs, horses, giraffes. But they're made of metal. They roam the wilds like gods from another age. And humans here? They've gone back to living in tribes, wielding bows and spears, trying not to get trampled by the world their ancestors left behind. Among these tribes is one called the Nora. They're deeply spiritual. They worship a goddess mountain they call the All-Mother, and they believe the ruins of the old world are cursed. Technology is forbidden, machines are sacred, and disobedience is punished. Here, Rost isn't a hero. He's an outcast. In the Nora tribe, being an outcast means total isolation from the tribe. You don't get to speak to anyone, you don't get to trade, to pray with them, to exist. You live outside their walls, alone, surviving off the land. You are erased, but still alive. And that's where Rost lived, which brings us to the day he was handed a baby. She wasn't his. The matriarchs found her alone. They say she came from the womb of the mountain. And since she had no known mother, she was believed to be cursed, never to be raised by the tribe. This is where Rost comes in, a man who once had a family, but for reasons that are not yet known to me, has now cursed himself, choosing exile over community. He was tasked to raise the child. To him, it's more like he was allowed to raise her. Now, where Rost lived, this part of the wilds was unforgiving. Freezing rivers, cliffs slick with ice. It's not even easy to get to. This was no place to raise a child. But he agreed anyway. He became her teacher, her protector, and in every way that mattered, her father. She was named Aloy, but it was only a matter of time before the world would test her worldview. One day, Rost is calling for her. He's worried, but Aloy, now a tiny 6-year-old girl, is hiding in the bushes. Because ahead of her, framed in a warm daytime glow, is something she almost never sees. A mother with children, laughing, smiling, praising them. She ruffles a boy's hair as he adds berries to the basket.
You're quite the gatherer, aren't you, little Rost?
Aloy watches this with a craving deeper than hunger, so she does what only a child who has never felt a mother's love would do. She gathers her own berries, marches right up to the mother, and holds them out like she's offering the world's most important gift. The mother turns and freezes. Not the reaction Aloy was hoping for, not even close.
Children, come with me. She's an outcast, to be shunned.
With the gentleness you'd use to move a child away from a venomous snake, the kids are pulled away. Aloy stands there, holding her berries, a small offering to a world that refuses to even touch her. And then something inside her breaks. She crushes the berries in her fist. She runs blindly, and she doesn't see the hole in the earth until she's already falling. She lands with a splash. It's cold, dark. Aloy calls for Rost, the only person who will speak to her, but the only response she gets is her own echo. She's alone, with rats and bats, crawling through what she realizes is a cave. No, a ruin. A forbidden ruin. A place Rost told her never to enter. But Aloy isn't thinking about rules. She just needed to get out. She passes through metal frames and eventually emerges into a room with a dead person, and on his head, a strange device. Aloy grabs it. It attaches to her like it was waiting for her. Suddenly, she's surrounded by light, symbols, shapes in the air. For the first time in her life, something new seems to be speaking to her, not away from her. She uses the device to help her open a sealed metal door. She wanders deeper until she finds another corpse, still carrying a message. A projected man appears, waving warmly into the air.
Hi! Happy birthday, Isaac! Daddy sure does love his little big man.
Aloy is enthralled. A father speaking to his child, not shunning them, not flinching, just love that she's never seen.
Show me. Show me again.
Take him to. He's right behind you. Hi! Happy birthday, Isaac! Daddy sure does love his little big man. Look, Daddy can't be there with you and Mom, but we can still have a party, right? Sure we can.
Happy birthday, Isaac. Daddy sure does love his little big man.
She explores further, finding messages from the dead telling stories of fear, regret, heartbreak. People she has never met, but who feel strangely more human to her than anyone alive. Why did they die here? Why was she brought into a world that seems determined to keep her at arm's length? She doesn't know. But then she hears something she does know. Aloy! Rost. Aloy climbs up toward the sound of his voice, and suddenly Rost is there, grabbing her arm, pulling her out like a drowning child.
Oh, Mother be praised. Come, girl, take my hand. You don't belong down there.
He scolds her, yes, but there's a panic in his voice, one that only slips out when he forgets to be stern. Then he sees it, the device on her head.
What is that on your face?
Nothing.
He reaches for it. Aloy jerks away like she's protecting the only beautiful thing anyone's ever given her. He tries again. She runs back even further. And for a moment, just one, Rost looks like a man who suddenly realizes he can't protect her forever. He could barely protect her now. So he sets down the anger and picks up his spear.
Well, if you're gonna go sneaking away from home, you'll need to know how to survive in the wild.
This is Rost's version of love. He teaches her to endure a world that refuses to love her back. Tomorrow, she will begin training. The next morning, Aloy sits outside the cabin, waving her hand at shapes only she can see. Rost steps out with a bow.
Take your bow.
Bow?
Rost frowns at the technology he doesn't understand, at the danger he can't predict, at the girl he's trying desperately to raise with nothing but instinct and fear. But he keeps teaching. Medicinal herbs, stealth, silence.
All machines are dangerous, Aloy. Their power must be respected. But I will be beside you.
They sneak through watchers, gather wood, craft arrows. Rost moves with the precision of a man who's spent a lifetime alone. Aloy moves like a child trying to earn someone's approval. And slowly, she does. Later, they spot a guy they saw earlier. This time he's dangling on the side of a cliff. And eventually, he falls. Machines are close.
I can do nothing. If I shoot, it'll cause a stampede. Trample him.
But Aloy's device lights up. She sees the paths the machines walk.
I can sneak through.
You will not.
But she's gone. Yesterday she was alone and lost. She wouldn't wish that upon anybody right now. She needs to save this guy. Aloy slips through the grass, quiet as a whisper, dodging the machines. She reaches him, rescues him, leads him out. When they emerge, Rost pulls her back up to the ridge, and in that moment, as he touches her cheek, looking at the device, something softens in him.
So, it is no plaything.
He finally sees the world through her eyes. Not all the way, but enough. But the world hasn't softened. On the way home, the berry-gathering boy from before, Bost, pelts Aloy in the head with a stone.
Stay away, no mother!
The insult freezes her, the pain doesn't. She catches the next stone and throws it back, perfectly. But Aloy is still left crying. more from the reminder than the wound. No matter how many machines she kills, how many lives she saves, how well she hunts, she still doesn't belong. Rost cleans her wound, and for the first time, she asks,
Why am I an outcast?
Aloy, this is not the time.
Who was my mother?
Aloy,
Rost wants to tell her the truth, but the truth isn't his to give, so he tells her the only thing he can.
there is a way, perhaps.
So tell me.
The proving. The tribe's rite of passage held every year. Those who pass become braves, but to the one who wins, the matriarchs grant a boon.
Boon?
Yes, whatever the winner wants.
For Aloy, that means finally getting answers. For Rost, it meant something else. Because when she said,
Then I'll do it. I'll win the proving.
he just nodded, proud but not happy. Like a man watching his only child run towards something he couldn't follow. And though he never said it out loud, there's this quiet feeling that Rost carried something heavy. Something that made him choose exile. Something he'd never forgive himself for. The kind of secret that dies with you. But what follows is not childhood, it is transformation. Aloy and Rost train through snow, rain, forest, ruin, spears, bows, balance beams, cliffs that would make grown men tremble. She falls short, he offers a hand. She refuses it, climbs on her own. Rost's nod of approval becomes the closest thing she gets to love. And somehow, that is enough. She's growing stronger, faster, sharper. And then, Aloy leaps. When she lands, she isn't 6 years old anymore. She's something else entirely. She's ready to face the world that never wanted her. A child the tribe wouldn't touch becomes a hunter no machine can outrun. She's ready to force it to give her an answer. And there's that nod again. So she grew up, and one day, Rost decided it was time for her final lesson. That night, he led her to the far edge of Nora lands, past the embrace. The air was different there, still. Even the trees seemed to be listening. And then they saw it. The burning carcass of a machine she's never seen. This one was bigger, meaner.
The tribe calls it a sawtooth.
Not long after, a live one. Its shape glinted between the branches, a predator made of steel and teeth and rage. Rost has one last thing to say before she takes the thing on.
This hunt is yours to make, Aloy. Yours alone. No matter what happens, I will not intervene.
That line hit different, because until now, he'd always been right behind her. Silent, patient, unbreakable. And suddenly, he's out. A new machine to take down, completely alone. She studied the sawtooth the way he taught her. Slow, deliberate, analytical. Found the weak points, the canister, the eye, the timing between its patrols. And then she laid her traps. Shock wires stretched low across paths, fire arrows ready. When it triggered a trap, the forest exploded. Flames, sparks, the screech of metal on stone, a deafening reminder that this was no training exercise. Aloy rolled, fired, and slashed, and when the dust finally settled, the sawtooth lay sparking at her feet. She had done it, alone. Rost stepped out from the shadows, quiet as ever, and looked at the wreckage, then at her.
Follow.
He pulled her aside to talk about what the real meaning of this lesson was.
If you hadn't destroyed the sawtooth, how many braves might it have killed or injured tomorrow? The strength to stand alone, Aloy, is the strength to make a stand.
It was a compliment and a warning. He wasn't teaching her how to win a contest. He was teaching her how to live without him. You could almost hear it in his voice, a faint tremor that he never lets show. He knows his time with her is running out, and yet he avoids talking about why. Because that's Rost, a man who carries his own scars quietly. Their conversations before the proving should have been some sort of celebration. For Aloy, it meant the end of being an outcast. For Rost, it meant the end of being her father. When she found him before the Sawtooth, he just said quietly,
Aloy, you're here.
and beneath the words they exchanged, there was this weight, like he was saying goodbye without using the word. And if it wasn't clear enough yet, he laid it out. When she finished the proving and became part of the tribe, she would no longer be allowed to speak to him. It was the law. She tried to brush it off.
I'll come to you in secret. No one will see me, so I won't get in trouble. And I know you won't talk to me because it's against the law, but I'll talk to you. It'll be my crime, not yours. You'll just listen. And that's how we'll handle this.
You've put a lot of thought into this.
She had, but what she didn't realize was that he'd thought it through, too, for years. Rost wasn't joking. To her, it sounded like betrayal. To him, it was duty. In their final meeting before she passes into the tribe's walls for the proving, he talked for a while about her training, about how proud he was, how ready she was for the trials ahead. He reached into his cloak and handed her something small, a pendant made from machine wire and bone. It was simple, almost crude, and it was his daughter's.
Here. Wear this. It belonged to my daughter.
And when he said,
Take this too. Remember.
it wasn't a request. That's when it hit her. This wasn't some temporary separation. He wasn't coming back. She argued, of course, reminded him of her plan to sneak away and visit in secret, talk to him even if he couldn't respond. Nothing worked. He told her she couldn't. He couldn't. And if she wanted to be accepted, she had to let him go. This was his goodbye. Rost believed in laws, in order, in sacrifice. He still honored his faith in the All-Mother and lived by the traditions. But deep down, you get the sense that all of that was built on top of something much darker. Guilt. It's clear he carries the kind of grief that doesn't fade with time. I'm sure it has something to do with his past family and his real daughter. And when the matriarchs gave him a nameless infant to raise, he didn't see a punishment. He saw a second chance. When she said goodbye, she promised she'd find him again. He basically looked at her with that same expression he'd had since the day he named her. Pride and sorrow, perfectly balanced. He wasn't leaving because he stopped loving her. He was leaving because he loved her too much to keep her tethered to him. Their names now take on a profound meaning. Rost, literally the German word for rust, and Aloy, or when you add in a missing piece, alloy, a combination of metals, usually. So a name that embodies synthesis. Makes me wonder what this could mean for the rest of the game. Point is, rust will only corrode an alloy. And for a man who'd already lost everything once, letting go was the only thing left he could give. Let's fast forward just a little bit. Now it's dawn. The mountains of the Nora homeland glow pink beneath the rising sun. A line of people walk toward the mountain. In that line is our red-haired girl, Aloy. Her whole life, she's lived as an outcast, raised by a man the tribe shuns for life. But today is the day that could change everything. The Proving. A sacred competition, a test of skill, courage, and endurance. If she just gets through it, the tribe will have no choice but to accept her. If she wins, she can get her answers. If she fails, well, that means something went terribly wrong. They reach a wall and begin the climb. The climb makes one thing clear. The Proving isn't going to be a friendly race. At the top of the climb lies the first task. Bring down a machine and take one of its horns as proof of the kill. Arrows fly, metal crashes, sparks erupt. Aloy strikes fast, clean. She's faster than anyone expects, but as she lifts her trophy, a single arrow whistles through the air. and shatters it. It's Bost, the same boy who once threw a stone at her as a child. He smirks and runs, but Aloy doesn't stop. She brings down another machine, tears off another horn, and bolts toward the mountain path. The others, including Bost, are ahead. She's dead last, but Aloy sees something they didn't even consider, an older, far more dangerous, half-collapsed path that winds up the cliffs. A proctor tells her 2 people died trying it last year. Aloy doesn't hesitate. She leaps onto a wooden pole which tips over to the other side. No turning back now. Rocks crumble beneath her feet. The wind howls. She's climbing, slipping, gasping, but she keeps going. Against all odds, she makes it. She reaches the end of that old trail, hits a zipline that places her just in front of the pack, and with one final burst of strength, she places her trophy first. Aloy has done the impossible. She has won the proving. And for the first time in her life, the tribe that's been shunning her accepts her. Except for Bost, but that doesn't matter, because moments later, an arrow punches straight into the proctor's chest. And then chaos. Dozens of arrows rain down from the ridges. Contestants fall one by one as screams fill the air. The hunters become the hunted. Aloy ducks behind cover as masked cultists swarm in, weapons blazing. These aren't bandits. They're organized, armed, ruthless. She picks off targets one after another, but there are too many. It seems like every time she looks, another Nora falls. At some point, the roar of something new cuts through the screams. This tribe? They've never heard anything like this. A cultist steps out, not with a bow, but with a weapon of the old ones, a machine gun. He mows them down, including Bost. Aloy knows it's too late. Everyone she knew from the proving, gone. Aloy fought her way through the remaining attackers, one after another, until the battlefield was silent. She's breathing hard, clutching her bow. She stood over one of the bodies when she notices a small device on his ear. Oh yeah, these are called focuses. But it's just like hers. She knelt down to take it, and I'll just let you watch what happens next.
Turn your face to the sun, child. Burn it all, then to your task.
As you command.
Aloy. Survive.
Aloy and Rost's story split apart again. This time, forever. The man who raised her, who the world called an outcast, is truly gone. But Aloy will never forget Rost. She will never forget the only person she was allowed to be around for the first nearly 2 decades of her life. In the end, this is what's left of Rost. Some rocks, some candles, and a silence that feels heavier than any machine she's ever faced. Then Nora gave him a burial, but not a legacy. Even in death, he's a ghost they pretend never existed. And maybe that's the part that hurts the most. Not that he died, that hurts too, but that he lived a life the world wasn't allowed to acknowledge. Because think about it, a man doesn't choose exile lightly. A man doesn't volunteer to vanish from his own people unless he's carrying something so dark, so irreversible that disappearing feels like mercy. Whatever Rost did, or whatever was done to him, it was enough to erase himself. But then, he gets her. A baby with no mother, no name, and an origin sealed off behind metal doors and tribal superstition. And instead of turning away like any sane outcast should have done, he devoted the rest of his life to her. He didn't leave her comfort. He didn't leave her closure. He left her unimaginable weight. For an outcast that didn't say why did he accept her and allow her to live? Who is she, really? Where did she come from? These are the mysteries she has to carry now, and Rost prepared her. Every hunt, every bruise, every quiet lesson whispered under the breath of the wilds. None of that was by accident. This wasn't parenting. This was forging a blade. He knew she would cut through something ancient, buried, forbidden. And whether she's ready or not, the moment she wakes up from that cliff, the hunt for that truth begins.
Rost.
Thanks for watching.